Thank you very much. And please enjoy the food. Thank you.
I'm taking home an extra cookies, so don't fight me. So welcome back, and the new folks who just popped in. For those of you who didn't meet me last month, my name is Marnie Rosenberg. I'm the Crossroads Coach. I do career coaching and leadership coaching for organizations and also for individual clients in a variety of capacities, workshops, presentations, and also one-to-one coaching. As you can imagine, anytime we're talking about career coaching, whether it's individuals or organizations, stress just might creep into the conversation, as it does. How many of you came here today completely stress-free? Probably none of you, or you wouldn't be here. But today's conversation about stress is going to be a little bit different spin than you've probably heard. There are a lot of tips out there for what to do when you're stressed out. This is a little bit more about addressing it at the root. So I'll encourage you to ask questions at the end, take in notes, and hopefully you will leave with some new ideas. We tend to talk about stress sort of passively as if it's something that's imposed upon us or given to us. Think about the language that we use. It's stressing me out. The situation is stressful, or I'm under a lot of stress. That's a favorite for me because it's like a big boulder, right? I'm under a lot of stress. And when we talk about it that way, it's really, we're using a passive voice. Like it really is something that's given to us and something that we're really kind of powerless to escape. We're sort of receiving it. It's like a storm that we need to wait to pass. And while we wait it out, there are consequences because stress is really a distraction from everything else that we're doing. When we're experiencing stress, we're less creative, we're less open-minded, we're less flexible. We're probably not accessing our intuition and our real genius in the work that we're doing. When we're stressed out, we show up differently in our relationships at work, how we relate to our colleagues, how we talk to the people who might do work for us. We take it home, we take it out on our partners or our kids. And overall, the effect of stress is that it's an energy drain. I'm going to talk a lot about energy today and how stress is really depleting energy that you'd rather be using for other things. It's a distraction. And so while we're experiencing stress, we're a lot less productive, we're a lot less engaged with what's going on around us, and overall what that really means is that our ability to tap into our potential is severely diminished. But what happens when we change our perspective and shift away from this passive view of stress and stop seeing it as something that happens to us, but really something that we have a choice to experience or not? Think about that for a moment. We were talking about traffic earlier on bicycles, but how many folks drive in the city and experience stress around driving? So you get cut off. I'm sure you do, because I get cut off all the time. And in the moment that you get cut off, think about the reaction you have. You slam on the horn, you're angry, you get worked up, you really you shout obscenities. Or what's the alternative? Maybe you think, I don't know what's going on for that person. They're obviously in a big hurry. They must be having a worse day than I am. So it's the same stressor, it's the same stimulus, but you can have completely different reaction depending on your starting point, right? And we think that we don't have a choice, but in that moment where we decide to think something differently and not react, right? That's where you have choice, right? So there's a decision that's being made, and it might be a knee-jerk reaction, but in a split second, a decision is made to allow something to stress us out, even if it's unconscious. So we'll come back to that example and a couple of other examples later. So my goals for today are to offer a new approach to thinking about stress, and I already gave you lots of hints. You have a choice. Another goal is to raise your awareness that certain default behaviors and thought patterns that you've developed around stress may get in the way of achieving what you want. And this is about recognizing that we have these triggers over and over again. Maybe it's a person that you work with, or pedaling your bike down Market Street, that there are things that we are sometimes just, our default behavior is to be stressed out by them, and it's getting in our way. And to illustrate in a number of different ways that you always have a choice as far as how you experience life and the things that happen to you, no matter what the challenge. So here's this energy piece. What we think affects our energy. We're actually creating our own realities based on our thinking and our perceptions. So think about a day, San Francisco, unpredictable weather. Think about a day when weather got in the way of your plans. Maybe you had intended to go to a barbecue or do something outside in a park, and you look out the window and it's raining. And your thought in that moment might be, why does this always happen to me? What's the energy in that thinking? Probably down here, right? Why does this always happen to me? Defeated, maybe? What are the emotions that get tied into that kind of thinking? Disappointment, blame. Why did I move to this city? I knew the weather wasn't going to be predictable. So you feel the effect of the weather. But you could also walk out into the rain and say, this is fantastic. I actually really love the rain. Rain is a great excuse to get that book off the shelf that I've been intending to read. Maybe I'll call up a friend and have a coffee date. Once again, like the car being cut off on the road, it's the same stimulus, but two different people might have an entirely different reaction, or you might have a different reaction depending on the day. So what's the energy around this kind of thinking? It's a little up here, right? Great, rain, bring it on. Sorry, I have a little bit of a cold. So I've illustrated two very different reactions to the same stimulus. And the different reactions are caused by having a different mindset about the weather, right? And mindsets shift, and we're going to talk a lot about how to shift the mindset. Because mindset is a choice. Oh, I'm going to come back to that. Well, mindset is a choice. I'll use this as an example. This is actually my sister and her husband on their wedding day in Pennsylvania. I did get her permission to put it into my presentation. It's floating around various places. Right after, like literally 5 minutes after their vows were finished in an outdoor clearing, it was an absolute torrential downpour. They were at a camp in Pennsylvania. And the camp directors drove around on a little golf cart and handed out these giant leaf bags, which all of the wedding guests proceeded to cut holes in and then dance around in garbage bags. And I can tell you seriously, this is the biggest smile I've ever seen on my sister's face. And I'm sure we all know people who would be absolutely devastated to have rain on their wedding day, right? It's all about mindset. And so as I was saying, mindset is a choice. How we think about things is a choice. And what happens when we think certain thoughts with different kinds of energy around them is that they have a direct impact on what we do next, right? So I want to really connect you to the kinds of thoughts that you have around different experiences in your life, and recognizing that a shift in mindset, a shift in thinking, has the ability to empower you to do different things when you're not that little kid with his face pressed up against the window, okay? And the idea is that every thought that we have has an energetic consequence to it, okay? So the two buckets that I'm creating here are about constructive energy and destructive energy. Certain thoughts have a destructive effect on us, and it literally drains our energy, right? Why does this always happen to me? And I'll give you a couple more examples. We can feel drained, we can feel contracted by the kinds of thinking, tightened up, like we have no choice, like we're powerless, or we're frustrated. And then in contrast to that is this constructive energy that is expanding and it fuels us, right? I can take on the world. What power there is in that thought. You might not think it very often, probably are moments for all of you when you do, right? So think about the energy and the different kinds of thoughts that you have and how they either get you stuck moving forward or how they empower you to do something great. So here are some examples. I'm sure it will work out fine. How can I help? What's the opportunity here? Constructive thinking. I can't do this. Why even bother? Is it Friday yet? Almost, one more day. If I want it done right, I had better do it myself. When you think about the first three on the right side, I'm going to separate out that class. What kind of emotion is tied into I can't do this and why even bother?
Fear and hopelessness.
Hopeless. What else? Defeated. Victim.
Doubt.
Down.
Doubt.
Doubtful. Yeah. Yeah, it's this really low victim energy where things are just, things just happen to you, right? And what about that last one? If I want it done right, I better do it myself.
Mistrust.
Mistrust. You're like pulling on the boxing gloves. I better do it myself, right? There's anger in that one, right? So this is that kind of destructive thinking that moves us in a different direction than perhaps the thinking that is in that left column. So to tie this to stress, a stressor, right, an external stimulus triggers the thinking and the reaction, and then we take action. Let me illustrate that for you here, okay? So we have a stressor, and that's external. That could be the rain, that could be the person that cuts you off. That could be, I don't know, any kind of a bad day, right? I'm sure we've got plenty of examples. And then you have an energetic stress reaction to it, and that's internal. And then you will take an action, or maybe you will be inactive. But that's the sequence that we move through, from the external event to the stress reaction, and then that stress reaction has a direct effect on the action that we take as a result. So, using the driving scenario as an example, the car cuts you off, you get angry, you slam on the horn. Oh, there you slam on the horn. You get angry and you slam on the horn. And actually, this happens so fast sometimes that we don't even realize that there are steps involved, right? That's why we call it a knee-jerk reaction. But there actually is a very quick processing that's happening here before you take action, right? Because what else would cause different people to have a different reaction to the same stimulus? That's the mindset piece, okay? So your attitude in a moment, or your attitudes in general about life or about certain situations, your perceptions, your whole belief system, right? That's what's creating your mindset. Very complex set of things creating your mindset in a moment or your mindset in general. But that's what becomes the filter, right? So you have this external stimulus, and in that moment, passes through your mindset, and that's what's going to create different kinds of reactions for people, right? So it's the mindset is the filter or the lens through which you're experiencing the world in all different ways at any point in time, right? And so where we lose track is that there's a thought that happens in here, right? There's a moment where there's a thought, I'm so angry at that driver. And the anger comes with it, and then we take an action. And so slowing it down and realizing that this is a process and that we do actually have the ability to recraft our mindset and our belief systems and have different thoughts that might lead you to not slam on the horn, for example. So the choices that we make are impacted by mindset. So here's a typical situation. And actually, somebody who couldn't be here today emailed me and he said, I wish I wasn't missing your stress talk. I'm so frustrated at this client. I really needed to be there today. So you've spent time working on the plans for one of your clients. You did everything right. You spent the time, you did the research, you checked your requirements, you know the regulations, you sent it off on time. And the next day you've moved on to something else, and the phone rings, and that client is ready with their long list of changes for you. And maybe it didn't even start with, well, it was a great job. Just, here's what I need, okay? What kind of reaction might you have? frustrated,
Despair.
despair. Yeah.
Freeze. Exhaustion.
What's that?
Freeze.
You freeze? Yeah, that could be one too. What do I do now, right? So let's talk about, well, that's that little kid in the window. What do I do now, right? So let's talk about two typical reactions, right? Despair, that's what we're talking about with the victim mindset, right? Why does this always happen to me? What was the point of all my work, right? I worked so hard on this. I got no appreciation. I'm not valued, right? I have no choice in this matter. You know, clearly I've lost, right? This was a test for me, and I've lost because the client is unhappy, right? And all of that kind of thinking comes with those emotions that you're talking about: despair, disappointment, self-doubt, you know, or low self-esteem. Maybe I don't know, maybe I didn't have a good grasp of this project, you know, maybe I don't really know what I'm doing here. And so all this emotion rushes in with the thought. That's the energetic stress reaction that we were talking about. And you might freeze. I'm glad that you said that. Sometimes when we're in such a low energy state, receiving this kind of feedback or stress stimulus, we just feel a little bit paralyzed, right? Like, I don't even know what to do now. I really feel powerless in this situation. And, you know, I don't even know what I could do to make a difference, right? We get stuck. And, you know, who knows what happens with that next set of plans that you were working on. It probably takes you some time to get back to it, right? In that moment that the phone rang, you completely lost track of where you were and what you were doing, and it's hard to get back, okay? How many of you might be angry? My client doesn't know what he's talking about. What a jerk, right? Clearly, I know what I'm doing. He didn't take the time, blah, blah, blah. We get angry, put it on our box and let us, right? We're ready to fight. My client's a jerk, right? We don't feel like victims here. You feel how different the energy is, though, from that victim energy? Like, what's the point? Why fight? They're like, I'm ready to fight, right? It is, totally, exactly. So you have these thoughts, you know what, I hate that client. You know, I'm gonna make sure that I show her, you know, what's what, because clearly I'm right. And in this mindset, which we call conflict energy, everything's very black and white, right? There's not really a lot of gray. I'm right, you're wrong, we're gonna win, you lose, you know, good or bad. We get in this very black and white mode, and we're angry, and can feel really antagonistic. And so that core action is defiance in this case, which you could argue, and we'll talk again in a minute about how, well, that's more productive than freezing, right? Because I'm going to go back to those plans, and I'm going to fix them, and I'm going to show the next time around. So there's some more productivity that comes in this kind of mindset, but it's pretty exhausting, right? Like being angry for a while about this project. It still probably distracted you from what you were already doing. And you're not going to be your most creative when you're in that mindset of like, I just have to show that client, you know, what's what. What's familiar about the two that I talked about, victim and conflict? You've heard it talked about in a different way, how we react to stress. Fight or flight, right? Fight or flight, victim energy. I'm gonna get out of town and curl up in a ball, right? Or I'm gonna fight. So you know, this is actually what we're programmed to think: fight or flight. These are my reactions to stress.
There's one more reaction. It could be joy, because you go cha-ching, here comes another ad service and a bunch of change orders.
You are so right. You're like the perfect plant in the audience, but we're going to get there in a minute. But this is the problem with the programming, right? Is like fight or flight. What else is there? And there's a lot more, right? There are a lot of different reactions that we could have to that situation, right? How could this be good for me? We're getting there. We're getting there. Notice that we're using the language victim, which I know has a negative connotation out in the world, but we're actually not judging these reactions because we all have these kinds of reactions to different situations in our lives, and it's normal, right? In certain circumstances, it's going to make sense, right? If there's a lion chasing you, You're probably going to pick one of those, and it's probably not going to be fight. But these are default behaviors, and so we do want to talk about why we do them and the advantage and the disadvantages. So the benefits of victim energy, right, or that sort of receding, is it might feel a little bit safe, right? And probably a better example than the one with the client is grief, right? There are a lot of, there's a lot of grief stimulating us on a daily basis, and there are times in our lives when we just need to recede a little and take a little space, right? And so there are times when it's going to make sense, and the advantage to being in that low withdrawn energy state is it feels a little bit safer. I'm not going to make a decision right now because I'm not ready. I don't know what I could do that would make a difference. It does get sympathy and attention from other people. We're just like, oh, that client was so terrible. He came back, and can you believe it? And then a fellow architect would be like, I know, I've worked with that client too, pat, pat. We might feel a little bit better, right? So there's an advantage. There's an advantage to stepping back for a minute and not necessarily taking the next step, which comes with consequences. But there's an obvious disadvantage, and certainly as leaders in your organization, being in that mindset, in that victim energy state, you're not moving your business forward. You're not moving your clients forward. If you have people that are working with you or for you, you're not motivating them. You're not leading when you're in a victim state. Okay, so we're less engaged, and there's nothing really happening. Important to notice too, victim reactions versus victim mindset. Both could exist, right? So having a victim reaction to something, it's acute, right? But if we notice that we frequently have that reaction to things, there might be something deeper going on, right? I always react this way. This is where we get into default behaviors. There's something else to look at. Okay? So let's talk about the advantages and disadvantages to that conflict energy. A lot can get done, right? When we suit up and put on our boxing gloves and we step into the ring, get that done, and you need to fix that, and I'm going to turn this around. It's more productive. It really is. It's more productive. It's that sustaining that's difficult because it's really tiring to be angry all the time. And you can burn out. You can burn out your employees if you have people working for you or with you. And while there can be short-term productivity, over time it's not sustainable, right? And that, oh, I need to do this right for my boss so he doesn't get mad. Over time, it's going to lead to dissatisfaction, right? I don't want to work for somebody that's just like constantly telling me that what I'm doing is wrong. I'll do it now, and then I'm going to get out of town. Okay, so neither of these types of energy, the victim energy or conflict energy, those mindsets are sustainable. So who's ready for an alternative? We had Joy in the back. So here's an idea. We are all responsible for what we think and feel. How many of you have said, she made me feel so guilty, she made me feel so bad, right? Somebody made me feel something. And we just sort of hand off that power as if it's not in our control. But the truth is that in everything that happens in our careers and in our lives, we choose how we think and feel, and no one can make me think or feel anything that I don't want to feel, right? Obviously, there are moments where we're feeling, receptive to it, and that's based on mindset. So, in this mindset, the core thought is, so we get out of that black and white, I win, you lose, and I still want to win, but maybe somebody else could win too, right? So maybe I can fix these plans, and and then they'll be happy with them. I'm still kind of frustrated, but I don't have to let this take away my momentum. Finding the silver lining is what happens here. There's a lot of forgiveness in this mindset, so we're still not at joy. We're sort of shifting up the spectrum, right? But this is the start of more constructive energy because we recognize that what we think and feel is entirely up to us. And if I choose to not let this get in my way, it won't. And this might involve some rationalizing. Okay, so you know what? I never thought that was the brightest client. You know, they've always sort of pushed me in this direction. You're sort of having this inner dialogue, but it has the effect of allowing you to release some of that frustration, right? I'd rather not do these plans again, but I know that I can, and I know that I don't have to let it get in my way. So it's responsibility, but there's also it's taking responsibility, but there's also a lot of rationalizing away the stuff that is sort of getting in our way in that anger. And the result is you feel a lot more productive. It puts you more back in the spirit of cooperation with the clients and employees, and it allows us to move forward.
Can I just add something?
Absolutely.
One of the best bits of advice I ever had as a young draftsman was after having to redo something over and over again, for changes. Older architects said to me, it's always faster the second time. And I think of that every time that this kind of thing comes up. I just say that to myself, it's going to be faster than the first time. And so it's like then I'm locked into how am I going to improve.
I was just going to say, so what's the possibility that it's not only faster, but it's better because you went back and did it again?
Right.
Yep. And we're not going to have time today, but beyond 3, there are a couple of other. This is all part of core energy coaching, which is a particular type of coaching that I was trained in that talks about how your mindset and your energetic response impacts how you see the world and what you're able to accomplish. And one is opportunity, right? What's the opportunity in this? I didn't want this phone call from my client, but I know that every time I go back and do a set of plans again, they turn out better. So what's the gift in this, right? And wow, when you think about the energy in a thought like that versus here we go again, right? You're staying totally empowered. This is about keeping you empowered because you have so much to do and so much that you want to accomplish personally and with your firms that this is about just keeping you in the driver's seat so that you don't, there's no hole in the bottom of your bucket of energy, and at the end of the day, you've got nothing left for your most, your creative and your genius is gone. So let's talk about this in execution. I'm going to move through this part really quickly. That same situation where you've done the plans and you've gotten a call from your client, flight reaction. We already talked about it. Why did I even try? This always happens. My client hates me. Maybe I'm not good at this. Right? Victim energy, level 1. Anger. I know what I did was right. Why didn't they see it? I have the worst clients. Reaction 3. You know what? I did my best. My clients probably, not my clients, knew. There's all that rationalizing that goes on. It's not cool. I have to do this again, but it'll be fine. It'll be fine. Right? And then think about how the rest of your day goes. Think about your interaction with the office. Think about your response to that client when the anger's not there. Your options open up, right? That sort of black and white, dichotomous response to things is gone. Okay? And as a result, you're staying productive when you've released that negative energy. You keep the peace, helps you maintain your relationships the way that you want them to, and it doesn't get in the way of your goals, right? This is just one thing that happens in a day. You've got a lot more to do, okay? So back to that, that road rage example, how do you choose to react from a place of responsibility? It might sound like, there are a lot of bad drivers out there. I'm glad I'm not one of them. I'm going to turn up my Pandora station and I get back to what I was doing, right? Because they've moved on, so, why can't we, right? We got things to do. So this is about not giving up your power and not defaulting to these behaviors that we do, if you have that mindset of I just hate driving in this city, right? Then you are going. It's almost like you've got your gloves on before you even hit the road, right? And it's self-fulfilling, right? If you're looking for the fight in life, you will always find the fight, right? And actually, that conflict energy is everywhere in the world. It's the dominant energy in the workplace. In the world, right? Why'd you have to bump into me on the sidewalk, right? There's anger everywhere, and it's entirely up to us to decide whether we're going to meet it or whether we're going to just diffuse it and keep going, right? We got things to do. So what you can do starting now